Hello everybody, I'm Happy Pinecone, and today I'll be talking about how I make my webcomic, Lights Lemonade. I've been making comic strips for as long as I can remember, and Lights Lemonade is the second comic I ever posted in an online platform. I started posting it in Tapas last February, followed by Webtoon by March. Since then, Lights Lemonade has become a fun hobby that helps me put up some steam from school. It also gave me more experience in digital art, as well as practice essential comic making skills such as writing, panel composition, and perspective. There is no doubt that I still have so much to learn. Nonetheless, I hope that by watching my process and hearing me talk, you would be able to gain a valuable learning experience. So without further ado, let's get into it! Before I actually make the comic, the first thing I do is come up with ideas. Because Slice of Lemonade is a slice of life comic where normal things happen in a somewhat weird way, the ideas had to be straightforward, sort of funny, and relatable. I use my personal life and experiences as references, since the stories and characters are loosely based on my life. A good tip is to brainstorm all the possibilities before sticking to just one idea. You will never know when you hit gold, and once you choose something you like, you could save your other ideas for future episodes. After I came up with an idea that I liked, I would begin sketching some thumbnails. These are small and rough sketches that quickly communicates to me the flow of the episode. It's basically the comic version of storyboarding. Composition and flow are my only priorities at this stage, so I don't have to worry about making the thumbnails look pretty or clean. I just needed a visual to see if I made a good foundation. I often do this step on my sketchbook because it's quicker and more accessible. If I want to do the thumbnails digitally, I would use the thumbnail template I recently created. One benefit of thumbnailing digitally is that I could copy-paste the thumbnail to my comic document. Alongside my thumbnails, I write the script in Microsoft Word. This is usually where I screenplay the scenes from the shots to the dialogue, and since the stories are based from my personal life, I make sure to do some tweaks, whether it be over-exaggerating events or making intentional alterations. This is to not only make the episode funnier, but it helps keep the more private stuff private. There are some things in life that aren't meant to be made public after all, so whether it be events or people, I make sure to keep my episodes honest with a sprinkle of fiction here and there. Once I like what I made, it's time to actually make the comic page. The program I use is Krita since it's free and has the tools I need to make my comic, such as its comic page manager. I'm personally not a fan of its text tool, but it still works. So, using my thumbnails and script as my guides, I start drawing a bigger version of my thumbnail. I usually do this whenever I drew my thumbnails traditionally. Otherwise, I would just copy-paste my digital thumbnail and enlarge it with the transform tool. After either of those steps, I create the panels. I used to simply use the line tool, but recently I began using the rectangle tool with no fill instead, and the selection tool to remove the excess parts. It made my panels so much more consistent, and even made the coloring stage easier. More on that later. Next, I make a rough yet more defined sketch based on the thumbnail, and for my comic specifically, I usually do at least 1 to 2 sketches before I begin the line art. I think I did that because I want the line art to look like it's been drawn by a child with a slightly better hand control. Now that I think about it, I used to be more messy with my line art. Nowadays it looks cleaner than before. Once I'm satisfied with the sketch, I start making the speech bubbles and text. This makes sure that the drawings and words fit in the panels well before finalizing the line art. And if it turns out that the word bubbles and pictures are at odds, I would adjust accordingly. It's easier to do this during the sketch phase than the line art phase. This is also when I have to get along with Krita's text box tool. Hello everyone, this is Happy Pinecone from Post Production, and today I'll be showing you what I go through with the text tool. Now the good news is that what I like about the text tool is that it lets me automatically set what font I want to use for my comic. So for instance, I set the text bar tool to first show up my customized fonts that I made for my comic. But here's what I really don't like about it. Let's say that I want to make a sentence like, I am happy and I like cake. I am happy and I like cake. Let's say this for example. thing what I don't like about it is that it's really hard to adjust what I see in the text tool, because every time I had to like move it, like here, this is how I can get to see most of the text. But then the problem is, if I want to do editing again, I have to like go to the text bar tool again and start doing some trial and error. It doesn't show me real time on what it looks like as I do alterations. All I had to do is save. If I'm lucky, then I don't have to like close and open the text tool all the time. But there'll be moments where I have to like reopen and open the text tool in order to make my desired outcome. Luckily this is just a blank canvas. Imagine this if I had to like fit the words in a word bubble. It'll take a lot of trial and error in opening and closing the text bar tool, and it doesn't seem it felt unintuitive and really annoying. I am not sure if it's just me or it's something that needs to be fixed. But yeah, that's my number one nitpick of the text tool from Krita. I hope that one day they would fix it, but for now, I am okay with it. I just hope it gets fixed. Anyway, I hope I'm making any sense, sorry. Usually I use scripts. I read a script, but this is really impromptu, so I'm sorry if I'm not if it doesn't make any sense. After fixing the word bubbles, I move on to doing the line art. I usually turn off the speech bubbles layer on the stage so that I can see everything. This is the most time-consuming step, as the way the line art looks could make or break the comic. I love line art because they could create the look and feel of the illustration. Of course, lineless art is great as well, but to me, there is something about the outlines of the characters and setting that really grab my attention. Because I am still experimenting, I sometimes change the kind of brush I use depending on what I'm going for. However, I often use the pencil brush for my line art because that's how I usually draw my lines traditionally. And specifically, I recently been using the dirty charcoal sketch brush that was made by Raman Miranda some time ago. I like the way it makes my line work look crunchy and imperfect. Because my knowledge on human anatomy is limited, the way I draw now tries to compensate this by being more cartoony in the way I draw shapes. The line tool and assistant tools, and Krita in particular, are really useful whenever I'm wanting more precision in the line work, such as straight lines and perfect circles. After that, I create a transparency mask for the colors. This is a huge game changer for me. It not only helps in keeping the colors in place, but it also encourages me to experiment because it's self-destructive. I first make a transparency layer for the panels. This would keep the colors I would add later within. I would then add another transparency mask for the foreground elements of my comic. For my purposes, the foreground is my characters. From there, I color the characters. Just like the line art, my way of coloring can be different from time to time, and that will influence how I deal with my layers. For this one, I color using a combination of flat colors and watercolor brushes. I start by filling the first layer with white to keep the background colors from leaking into the foreground due to the watercolor's slight transparency later on. I then add another layer where I add the flats using the fill color hotkey and some watercolor for parts of the drawing such as the bow and skirt. I followed it up with a layer for shadow to create some depth. I also use this layer to apply some blush to the characters and it makes them look rosy. I don't do this all the time, but sometimes I would create a clipping mask on the line art layer to color in some of the lines. This forms some sort of abstract paper cutout effect on the characters as well as makes some areas less harsh than others. I usually use dark red for my line art, so sometimes the colors I add underneath will not please the eyes. Finally, I did a quick check, do some finishing touches, and export it as a PNG file. I also create resized versions of the pages since I will be posting them on Tapas and Webzine. And that's it! That is how I make my comic pages. Lights Lemonade is available to read in Tapas and Webzine. Give it a heart, comment, and a subscription if you enjoy it and want to be updated for more content. The support will really mean a lot. I hope you enjoyed this video and illustration. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, and or anime recommendations, send them through the comment section below. And while you're at it, like the video and subscribe if you want to be updated for the latest video. Speaking of which, as of making this video, this channel has reached 59 subscribers. This is such a pleasant surprise, it really made my day. People are seeing what I made and actually like what they saw. It's so awesome and surreal. So once again, thanks so much for watching and I hope to see you next time.